Wide open field, throws for a touchdown, and there's the record. Marino, quick drop, throws for the sideline. Caught, this may go, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown Miami. Mark Clayton gets a tie for the record with his 17th touchdown reception.
Every time I see Duper and Clayton,
Yep.
they say they made you.
Yep.
You hear that a lot?
Yep.
Every time you see him?
Not always, but
we all were on the same, second or third string together.
Yes.
So we built chemistry with each other. We used to stay after practice, to even when we wasn't playing, before we was playing. We should stay over after practice and just work on some things just in case if we did get in the game.
we all kind of made each other, that group. 10 years together, I think we played, or 11 years together. Knowing you could have those guys, outside, be able to throw the ball to was pretty special. But, in the long run, they could have been playing somewhere else and no one ever heard of them. So I'll take credit for making those guys.
What was it about them? There always just seemed to be a synergy between the three of you.
Yeah.
You understood what you wanted to do.
They love to compete. They love to, be the best they could be. And then they had talent. When you have that combination, you're going to be successful. And it was the one thing, though, about Duper that always bothered me, was he'd never die for the football.
I say if it had water down there and I was about to take a dump in the pool, that's when you dive, not on the football field. I just ran under the football.
No, but he didn't tell him that. This is what he really told him. I mean, this honest God truth. I'm not fabricating nothing. He said, "Listen here, Danny."
And I throw it in the end zone, and it was, if he
stretch
had dove a little bit, stretch, he would have caught it. He didn't do it. And I'm like, man, I start yelling at him, you should have dove for the ball. You should have dove for the ball. He says, Dan, listen.
They don't pay me to dive for the ball. They pay you to put it on the money.
You're making all the money, hit me in the chest.
And that's the way it was.
I was like, okay, dude, I can understand that.
What do you think the lasting impact of that season was? How what Dan did changed the NFL, it changed the way coaches approach offense, just the lasting impact it had on?
I think everybody realized that if you have a great talent at the quarterback position, it means so much as to opening the game up. And before that, the 3 yards and a cloud of dust and the ball control and the time of possession was the key to winning. Now with Dan and his great ability to put points up on the board, then people began to see how important that was and started to look for that kind of a quarterback.
He was ahead of his time.
Ahead of his time, he turned things around as far as offensive thinking was concerned.
What was different about Don Shula than what you had kind of, thought of in your mind before you met him? What was different about him than that?
I didn't really have any expectations coming in other than, when he was up front with me right off the bat. He was demanding, and I figured that's the way the head coach is supposed to be. And that he was always someone that was willing to listen to your ideas. He didn't always like your ideas, but he would listen to them, and he was a very good communicator.
Come with it, we're going to wedge on the ball.
Right.
And then we're going to work on offense, defense all day long. Let's beat them every play. Let's go.
He changed the way you coached, didn't he?
No doubt about it. I was a ball control, time of possession coach. I always believed that, if we had the ball 40 minutes and they had it 20 minutes, then that was a lot of good things. Our defense was resting. Our offense was controlling the ball, and hopefully at the end of the drive we would put points on the board.
You wanted to let him go. Give him the freedom to be Dan, didn't you?
So we realized pretty early that Dan was the guy that, loved to throw the football and threw it better than anybody else, and we wanted to make sure that we gave him that opportunity.
We didn't like running the ball. And that's why we liked Dan, because he would still change the play and we still would run.
Dan didn't like running the ball.
Right.
And if you handed it off and it didn't work, he would glare at me on the sideline. Why'd we run that play? Let's throw the ball.
You wanted to make sure that he called a lot of his own plays.
I felt that by the coach calling the plays that he was just going to, assume that the play was going to come into him. And I wanted him to just work hard in the practices and in the meetings to have all of the knowledge that you need to call your own plays.
Did Coach Shula ever question you about changing play calls that he may have sent into something else? How was that
Coach
relationship with you and him?
Oh, you know what? It was always great. You know, there's times
It was great when you completed the pass.
If it worked, yeah. You know, but I always used to tell him that I changed it to the line of scrimmage, and sometimes I changed it in the huddle. I'm not sure if he knew that he would have liked it that much, but listen, Coach Shula was always, you know, so I guess it's innovative in a way, and just understood that let players make plays, and if you feel comfortable with it, you know, you do what you need to do. But he also, you know, had quarterbacks before I came in, like Johnny Unitas, that pretty much called all his own plays, and Greasy, and then Don Strock was here, was calling all his own plays, and he was with us, you know, that year and helping us from the sideline. He was kind of like my coach too. So, you know, that's the one thing that was great about Coach Shula, just letting you do your thing.
Now, talk about the personal relationship you developed with Dan, especially during that '84 season, his second year.
Well, it was just a relationship that you really, it grew and grew because of his tremendous, he was a competitor.
So the expectations are to be to be the champions, to go to the Super Bowl and win. And I think that was the expectations of everybody on the team, and it's always been that way here.
The league had never seen anything like that before, and we put on a show for the whole season.
It was exciting. There was never a play, there was never a situation that came up that you didn't think, you know what, they can score from here.
Number 40, he may go 25.
But you just came right out of the chute ready to play. 5 touchdowns in that first game was remarkable.
You know, the first game was interesting because of, you know, like again, the personnel we had, and we used Jim Jensen in that game kind of for the first time as a move tight end, and then you have Duper and Clayton, and the style of defense that they were playing at that time was pretty much heads up, man to man. And you know, I don't care who you are, and you could be a Hall of Famer, or you could be, you know, playing those two guys, you know, man to man, bump and run, or off. They're going to beat you. And our style of play then was, you know, we had a lot of big plays, and we're winning games, you know, throwing the football.
Every week it got better because we were making plays that, you know, people hadn't seen before.
We just felt like nobody could stop us.
They hadn't seen that quick release, and they hadn't seen Duper and Clayton, two little guys going up in the air and catching the football in a crowd and moving the ball down the field and you know, putting a lot of points on the board.
You win 4 games, 5 games, 6, 7, 8, 9. You get to 11-0 at that point, and I don't recall a lot of, you know, now a team wins 8, 9 games, they start talking about the 72. I don't recall that kind of hoopla around our 11-0 start that year.
Yeah, I don't recall that either. I mean, that's, you know, it's interesting because I guess we could have had a shot. I mean, we end up losing to San Diego and LA. I think it was two weeks in a row, right? We lost 2 in a row. But I don't recall that, and probably should have been talk about that because of Coach Shula and the '72 team. But yeah, that wasn't a big deal then.
You run up against the San Diego Chargers. What do you remember about that game, that first loss of '84?
Well, I don't remember a lot about any losses. So. You know, they had a pretty good quarterback in that game too that knew how to put points on the board. It really became a shootout.
I feel like we should have won that game, even though it was like you said, it was a shootout.
Right, it was a shootout with Dan Fouts, and the fact that I felt like, you know, one of those games, you know, you get into and their offense was dynamic too, you know. So it's one of those deals that you feel like you had to, you know, score every time you had the ball, and they had it last.
I still remember, I mean, like how shoes just kind of like tore into us, like, you know, like we did something that was like, how could you guys do this?
You know, you learn from the mistakes that you made, and you hope that you don't make them again as you move forward.
You get to the playoffs. First you play Seattle. That's a team that had knocked you out the year before.
Yeah, anytime you get knocked out of the playoffs, you know, you want to have the opportunity to get back.
When we got knocked out against Seattle, we felt like that we owed them from the year before.
All my thoughts was, we're not going to let Seattle beat us. We're going to beat Seattle, and we're going to make it. We're going to advance to the next level, and that's exactly what we did.
for an AFC Championship game with the chance to go to a Super Bowl your first time. What were your nerves like going into that football game in particular?
I felt really good about our game plan and the things that we, had installed that week, and watching films and seeing how they played defense and what their scheme was. We matched up really well.
That was the Marino and Duper show, that game right there. And man, they were unbelievable. I mean, really, they was true.
You threw for 421 yards, 4 touchdowns, but the time championship game record. So the nerves didn't bother you very much at all going into that one.
Well, when you have the guys we had, and I was throwing the ball the way I did with an offensive line like we had, you don't get too nervous.
I knew that we were one step away from the Super Bowl.
The playoffs, it was easy for us. I mean, we just dominated everybody in the playoffs that year.
Marino sets his ball club from the Steeler 40. He drops quickly to throw, looks right across the middle. He's got Clayton open, 10, 5, touchdown Dolphins.
Going into that game and all the hype, your first Super Bowl, it just had to be great expectations for you.
I look back on it now, and I think I felt like we were supposed to be there, And maybe because of that reason, we didn't win. I mean, I felt like I expected that we were going to win.
My second year, I'm in the big game. Wow, I'm going to play in a bunch of more Super Bowls.
There were some guys that thought, we're going to be back here over and over and over, and they didn't realize this may be your only shot.
We ran into a team that was pretty darn good. Yeah, and they were good for a long time. And, we got a lot of the fanfare that year because we were breaking the records and all that, but they ended up having the #1 defense in the league, and, points allowed and all that. And then you run into Joe Montana and Roger Craig and that group, and it was they had experience in Super Bowl too. They had already won one. So it was one of those games that I wished we had played the next day.
You've said it. I've heard you say it 1,000 times. Is, you thought, geez, my second year, I get to a Super Bowl. We win 14 games, man. I'm gonna be here time and time again.
There's no doubt. I felt that after the game, and that's why you can't take that game for granted.
But at least I got the privilege to play in the game, because everybody that plays in the NFL doesn't get an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl.
Obviously, that had to be your lowest point of the season.
Yeah, because that was, that's what you're playing for, and that's what, we broke all the records, and we went 14-2 and all that, but it's about winning the championship, and we did.
It was a really big disappointment with me when we went to the Super Bowl and we let the 49ers beat us.
With the year that we had, after that game, I was very disappointed because that season, I wasn't used to losing. We lost the big one.
And that's the one thing. I mean, my career, I felt what it was like to be a quarterback in the league and do all the things you need to do, except, on the last game of the year to walk off and to win that game. And, that's that's the only thing that I look back on, and kind of, it hurts sometimes that we didn't do that. That group didn't do that.
Can anybody with more pure football talent?
Every time I talk about Dan Marino, I talk about him being the best pure passer that's ever played the game. Nobody has ever done it better. He has that quick release. He has the ball up here, and boom, it's like an explosion.
I always felt, from the time I was younger, I could throw it as good as anybody, and felt like I compete that way as far as a quarterback is concerned, on every level, and especially when I got to the pros.
When his mind said, this is where I want to go, the time it took for him to get that thought through his brain and then turn it into not only a pass, but a pass with accuracy and velocity.
And that ball goes right by the defensive back head, and I catch it. And, that's kind of hard to do. You got to have a strong arm to do that.
He had that reckless gunslinger kind of attitude, and it showed.
I heard Mark Clayton tell me something once about Dan. He said, Marino told me that he could complete a pass in a hurricane. He said,
well, he said he could throw it through a hurricane, and, I've never seen him play in a hurricane, but I wouldn't doubt it.
I could hear Dan saying that, yeah.
He'd actually bruise the receiver's hands in practice, wouldn't he, throwing it so hard?
He had that tight spiral, and he had the tremendous velocity on the ball. He didn't throw it like that. It was boom. It was a line drive throw.
And I remember standing on the sideline, and I saw you throw the ball as a touchdown, and I looked over the guy next to me, and he's looking at me, and everyone's on the sidelines going, did you just see what I just saw? And I think at that point, we all knew we had something special.
Thanks, Bo. You know, it's my style of throwing the football, I think, was to try to throw it by people sometimes and not necessarily always, you know, throw the ball with an arc.
We were a great offense. I mean, and you know, people can make their mouth say anything, but numbers never lie.
5,000 yards, 48 touchdown passes. Nobody had come close to that. When you look at the numbers that he put up that year, does that really put it in perspective just how spectacular he was?
Yeah, that's how you judge, you know, what a quarterback is or what he can do is his accomplishments.
When you stepped away from that season and looked at when the dust cleared and you look back, at any point did you say, wow?
Then we said, wow, but then afterwards, you know, the season and even like you look, I mean, Clayton broke the touchdown reception record that year.
Fires the middle. Clayton's got it. 50, 45. He may go. 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Miami. That's 18 touchdown receptions in a season. He is the all-time record holder. I've been waiting all year for this. Give Marino the ball.
We were doing it, but at the same time, we didn't kind of know we were doing it. You know, it was like one of those things we're out to win each week, and it came about.
We wasn't playing to break the records. It just happened, and I think that's the way that that you should play the game.
How did your life change during that whole
experience?
Yeah,
well, I think a couple things. One is, you know, we as a group we all became more popular, and you know, after that Super Bowl, you know, we ended up doing commercials. I did a commercial with Montana and got into, you know, a lot of the endorsement side of it changed, and you know, and also after the season, Claire and I, who we're still married and been married a long time, and we decided to get married after the season. So from that respect, it changed in a big way, you know. So, but it still was football, you know. It was football. It was about playing the game and winning and loving what you do. And the biggest change, I guess, was the fact that I was going to get married, and that, you know, after the season there was more endorsements and more popularity, I think. Not only for me, but for the other guys too. First 2 years, and I think Lau was in his 14th or 15th year playing free safety, you know, and just he was always a prankster, and I learned a lot from him, and just talking to him about, you know, what it takes to be a real pro in the league.
It was really a lot of fun to watch them light up the scoreboard, and I think for us as defensive players, I think it made me a better football player, because when you practice against Danny every day, you better be on your game, because he could fit it in there in just about any situation.
We had some battle against William Judson,
Don McNeil,
Robert Sowell, Paul Langford. I mean, those guys, I know I'm missing a couple of them, but I mean, those guys made us work hard.
They pulled all the weight that season for us. Our defense struggled and had some big adjustments to make.
It's almost like they were crossing each other. You know, the offense was coming up and the defense was heading down, and that was really tough.
That Orange Bowl atmosphere was special. I mean, and you know, when you played in the Orange Bowl for so long, and I played in many games there, and it seems like they were just so close. It was like they're part of it. It was like you were playing in a neighborhood game.
I mean, you could feel the fans. They were so close, and that old building used to rattle. You can't replace that.
And the fans, you know, I always say that they own the team. You know, it's this Miami Dolphins is really nothing against the owners that have been the owners for all the years. But it's our, you know, it's the community's franchise really, and they've always been terrific to me.
What was it like to go back to your hometown the first time as a Dolphin?
It was awesome, you know, really to grow up a Steeler fan and to be able to go back into Three Rivers Stadium then, and to be the quarterback for the Dolphins and play and start against the team that I loved growing up, watching all the Super Bowl teams, and just playing in front of family.
Went over to his row house there in Pittsburgh and sat out and ate the best Italian food ever. And you realize that Danny was just a regular guy. He came from a really strong middle class neighborhood in Pittsburgh, but he was just one of the guys.
His dad knew a lot about throwing the football, and I think he taught him a lot.
I know how special your dad was to you.
Yep.
He just had to be the proudest man on the face of the earth when you walked into that field at Three Rivers Stadium.
Well, I'm sure he was, and but I was probably prouder to be able to play that day, and him be in the stands and all the sacrifices that him and my mother made for me to be in that situation. I love Coach Shula. I love Jackie Sherrill as my college coach, but he was the best coach I ever had.
I wouldn't change nothing in the world about my career.
10 years
The good
with
and the bad.
10 years with this group of guys, man, that's a blessing.
I'm going to always have fond memories of, the partnerships we had with our teammates and our coaches.
We went to the big show, and it was fun, and I don't think I'll ever regret that.
But I think it's just that group and the success that we had that year. And it would have been better, like I said, we'd have won the Super Bowl. But you could point at a lot of things, and if you think about it, that group, the big plays, the way, the style we played, kind of really changed. How it's how football is being played today.
When you think about South Florida and the things that we accomplished down here, and the fans getting to watch Stan in his entire career, me having the opportunity to coach Stan, just a lot of great memories.